going on, guys, and welcome to another YouTube video. And today we'll be talking about the Lidl recruitment process for both store manager positions and area manager positions. They are both extremely similar. The only difference is that the area manager has one more stage than the actual store manager role. So let's dive right into it. So the first stage is obviously you got the application form that you have to fill in with your experience, your CV, your cover letter, stuff like that. As soon as you fill that in, they will send you an email almost automatically with the first stage, which is they give you 3 tests that you need to complete. And they give you 7 days to complete it. The first test is work-related behavioral questions. Easiest test in the world. All you have to do is answer as honest as possible. They will give you 4 questions. And you have to sort of put how much it describes you. I think you've got 5 points. Let's say one of the questions is, one of the statements is, I work well under pressure. If you feel like you got 5 points on this is the best that describes you out of the 4, you press 5. If you feel like I work well under pressure and you got something, I like leading others, these are the 2 main ones. You put 3 points on one and 2 points on another, so that it makes 5 points. That's how it works. The behavioral question is very simple. It's very similar to describes me best or describes me less sort of work behavioral question statements. Test number 2 is what they call verbal reasoning test. What they do is they provide you with a scenario. Usually they tend to use the company that they create. Within that company you've got 5 departments that you can look into, things like story, production, quantity, price lists, work times, holiday times, stuff like that. And then they will ask you a question or make a statement. For example, let's say that one of the departments within that test is working hours. They will say something like, John did not achieve his working hours or contracted hours for that day, which is all you would do is press the working hours department. It will give you a list of all the employees. You look for John and you match what the question is. He's saying that he did not achieve his targeted contracted hours, which is 37. You look, if it says that he has achieved the 37 hours, you would put that the statement is false. If it has achieved the 37 hours, you put that the statement is true. If you can't find John anywhere, you can't find the information anywhere, or it's put under sickness or something like that, you just press cannot say. So there are 3 options you have for that answer, which is true, false, or cannot find the information anywhere, which is cannot say. The verbal test, you got about 12 minutes to complete it, and you have 42 questions or 42 statements. They know that you might not be able to finish them all. What's important is that you read the question or the statement, understand it, find the information and respond it as accurately as possible. Sometimes they say that after they hire you, which is if you get 12 questions right, it's better than getting 42 completed questions and half of them being wrong. So do keep that in mind because they will look at the score after that. And then moving on to test number 3, exactly the same scenario, but they call it a numerical reasoning test. Rather than testing your verbal skills, they will test your mathematical skills or numerical skills. It's as simple as 1 + 1 is 2. It's as simple as that. I managed to finish 36 questions in the verbal, but in the numerical I struggle a bit more because I needed to use the calculator a lot more often than I should probably do. So I ended up, I think, out of the 36 or 42 questions that they've asked in numerical, I answered I think 12, but at least I'm sure that 12 were correctly answered in a sense. Do have a calculator, pen and paper if they prefer that way. With you doing that test because it makes your job that much easier. Exactly the same scenario. They give you a company with various departments there, and each department has a bunch of information. It's not a lot, it's very simple, but they will then ask you a question or make a statement, as simple as, if one of the departments is price list, for example. It's saying that, and then the price list is divided into sports, cars, or something like that, and normal cars. And they will say things like the normal car part costs 50% more than the sports car. All you have to do is calculate that and then answer the statement, which is either false, true, or you cannot find that information anywhere. Simple as that. Take your time to do it. It seems that 12 minutes is not enough to do it. 12 minutes is a long time. Take it easy, grab a calculator, read the questions, and you'll be fine. Moving on to stage number 2. So let's say that you've answered all those tests correctly, they've enjoyed what they've seen. They will then send you an email saying that your tests were successful, and now they want to book in a telephone interview. And usually that email comes with a few time slots for a whole day. Let's say that it's a Wednesday. They will give you time slots anywhere from 9 all the way till 5 o'clock. And you just pick one of those times. You send an email back saying, appreciate your email. I want the 9 o'clock slots. Thank you very much. The recruiter will then send you an email back confirming that yes, she can book you in at 9 o'clock and you've got a telephone interview next Wednesday, if that makes sense. Telephone interview usually take anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. Very simple, it's probably the simplest and easiest part of the whole process, which is just you and the recruiter talking about your experience, why you want to join Lidl, why you're leaving your current employee or employer, or why you left. We'll talk about salary expectations. She will then go through what the next stage will be as well. In case you are successful or unsuccessful, it doesn't matter. She will still tell you what the next process will be. And then after knowing you, after she understands your experience and what you're expecting, your salary expectations, holiday expectations, anything that you feel like she feels like she needs to know about you. She will then ask you the question as well if you have any questions, which there is a good chance that you may have or you may not have, depends on your approach. And then after she's done with that, she will then ask you 3 questions, competency-based questions, if that makes sense. Usually they tend to ask 3 key parts that Lidl takes very serious, which is results, targets, and motivating your team. The questions would be within those 3 areas. Something like, tell me a time where you use data or a metric to improve a sale within your store. The most common question as well, the second one would be, tell me a time where you had to deal with a performance issue or with a problematic employee, something like that. And then the third question will be around standards. How do you maintain the standards? What would you do if somebody called in sick, but your standards are still a priority? How did you maintain that, and how you motivate your team? Usually the questions will be within those 3. Quite simple, to be completely honest. Before the telephone interview, we write down those 3 questions, or those potential 3 questions. I don't want to say that that's what they ask. So they ask me. That's what I'm telling you. And just look to their experience and see where in those 3 questions, where does your experience fit? If you are applying for the store manager, you must have to deal with a similar situation like that. So I'm sure you'll be fine with that as well. And moving on to stage number 3. So now the third stage. Usually the result of your telephone interview would be sent to you via email. Either you've been successful or unsuccessful, and it's usually on the same day that you have the phone interview around 5 o'clock, just before the recruiter leaves. She will then process whoever she decides to put forward or whoever she decides to let go, sort of thing. And then they will give you a date of the interview, which is usually a week after the telephone interview. And this would have been discussed with you on the telephone interview as well. And as you may guess, the third stage and final stage is a face-to-face meeting. This will be with either the area manager if you're applying for the store manager position, the area manager of the area that you're applying for, and the recruiter. Or if you're applying for the area manager role, there will be the regional the regional manager or the regional sales manager, depends on who's available. That will do the interview with you, with the recruiter as well. Sometimes it's the regional manager and the sales manager. So, but that you shouldn't let that bother you, because they are people just like you. They want to know you, you want to know them, and that's how your attitude should be towards working. What happens is the interview place is usually on one of the regional distribution centers, so the distribution center for the area. that you're applying for, which usually is very close by. It doesn't go more than an hour for sure. Sometimes they may decide to do that interview in one of the stores, because some of the stores, they do have offices that they use. So sometimes it can be the case that they rather use it in the store, but it doesn't matter. The result is exactly the same. The interview is completely based on competency-based questions, and then at the end there is a 20 minutes. The competency-based questions is an hour and 15 minutes usually, and then you get a 15-minute break, and then you have 20 minutes of what they call department testing. I'm not entirely sure if that's the correct name for it, but I'm gonna go with it. The 1 hour and 50 minutes is very simple. It's competency-based questions. It will ask you anywhere from 5 to 10 questions. All of them are based on your experience. All of them are based on the experience that you should have if you are applying for the store manager. Typical based questions, anywhere from tell me a time where you used a metric similar to the phone interview. Tell me a time that you had to deal with a difficult situation. Tell me a time where you've been gone above and beyond customer service. Time where an employee was struggling with a disability. I've seen a question like that as well. It all depends, but it all based on your experience. My suggestion to you is do what I did, which is I made up 20 questions that they could potentially ask me, and I answered them all at home, and I sort of interiorized it, and so I can be ready for that interview. It's not completely, they don't actually ask you to use the STAR method. I personally use it because I believe that it just makes everything so much easier. They usually ask you the questions, provide me an example of. They don't ask you about the STAR method. They will, however, ask you about the result if you don't say it, just to make sure that they have a result that they can write down of the question they've asked for. After 1 hour and 50 minutes of interview, it might not take as long, depends on how fast you are at answering and how much you want to know and stuff like that. They will send you for a 20-minute break. You can go to the loo or have a coffee or tea. They've got it available in there as well. And then after that 15-minute break, they will give you what they call department testing. I'm not entirely sure if that's the correct name. They will give you 4 pages that contain 4 things. Number 1 is productivity of the store, hours, targeted hours, contracted hours, earned hours, KPI, stuff like that. Second one is departmental targets, loss and waste, stuff like that. Within those departments you'll have non-food, they call it fresh, chilled and ambient. That's all there is in the Lidl store for the most part. And then on the 3rd page you will have an inventory result and how the analysis for the whole year. And then on the last one you will have customer feedback. That's all the 4 pages are. All you got to do is analyze each page and then answer the questions that they ask you on that piece of paper. It will be something like, how would you improve, let's give an example for all 4 pages. First page, productivity and hours. They will give you something like the store has been overachieving their targeted hours for a couple of weeks and a couple of months because they can't cope with the workload. You need then to say a reason as to why they've been overextending the targets, which means that the company is paying you more money to invest on people, even though the sales don't reflect that. Don't reflect the fact that you're using so much labor, if that makes sense. So how do you go about fixing that? That's the main question. On the 2nd page, which is the departments, you'll have a graphic that you need to analyze. It was something like, we've sold £60,000 in a week of non-food, we sold 25,000 on fresh. However, we had much bigger loss on non-food than we had on fresh. And the question is, how would you go about fixing the issue? How interpreting and analyzing the graphic, how do you go about fixing the loss that you had on non-food and the earned, how do you maximize the sales on chilled, or you're not selling enough ambient, how do you maximize the sales on ambient? Those are the kind of questions they will ask you. On the 3rd, which is an inventory, which by the way is a massive thing for Lidl, always a massive thing for Lidl, because not to get into it, but they are a discounter. Their margin, the revenue margin, is very small because they charge very small for the prices as well. So the more inventory you lost, the harder it's going to be to get sales on. That's just how it is. But they will give you analysis to analyze it for the whole year, and they'll ask you a simple question: how would you go about fixing the inventory result? How do you make sure that the inventory target doesn't go above but goes under, and you keep improving it all the way? How do you go about doing that? And on the third one is usually they will give you comments, the customers that come through, and they will ask you how would you go about fixing customer service, customer standards, and how would you respond to each comment that they've done. That's the kind of questions that they may ask you. That's the ones they've asked me. They might have different questions now. They may have more questions that they print out, I guess. But those are the questions that they've asked me. Not saying that they will leave exactly like that, but more or less that's my experience anyway. So that's pretty much it. So you've got an hour and 50 minutes of competency-based questions. You got a 15-minute break, and then you have a 20-minute sort of departmental analysis, KPIs analysis, something like that. I don't remember the name, so I apologize for that. And that's it. For the store manager position, you would then have to wait about a week for them to make a decision. And then they will call you saying that you've been successful in doing this. And then they will take you through the next stages, which is the good part. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing. I tried to make it as simple as possible. Sometimes it's a bit difficult considering, but yeah. For the area manager role, there is only one difference. Now keep in mind that the area manager, it depends on the region. The store manager is consistent with each region, it's exactly the same. The area manager tends to change from region to region and to regional, manager to regional manager, it depends. But you would either have exactly the same scenario, just area manager based, rather than having just the one store to analyze, you would have anywhere from 4 to 6 stores to analyze. And the questions would be a lot bigger. Right? The area manager competency-based questions would go anywhere from 8 till 15, because obviously you would have that multi-site experience that they are looking for, and they would be asking questions how you do with a different store, how would you deal with an underperforming store manager, how would you deal with his team that is not being able to get on board, stuff like that. The only difference with the process for the area manager is that you would have an extra test. Rather than having 3 tests, which is behavioral, verbal, numerical, you would have one which is email based, which is quite interesting. Now keep in mind this might be different from region to region, and all the email testing gives you is you've got a bunch of emails that they send you in, 5 emails. You've got options to flag each email that's more important. All you would have to do is either respond to those emails, flag them up to say that they are important so you don't forget about them, or just delete them saying, okay, it's just an information, read it, got it. They are expecting you to being able to handle a lot of information, being able to handle a lot of responsibilities within the stores, because they will ask you things, they will send emails down, things like, this store hasn't recalled all the items that we asked, non-food related items that we asked. They will think, can you please analyze this? They will just, that's the kind of test that it is. It's how you handle huge amounts of information within the system that they've got, which is email based. They will usually give you a tablet or a laptop to work with. And that's pretty much it. That's the recruitment process for Lidl, and hopefully I made it as simple as I could. I hope I didn't overcomplicate things, and I was able to give you a bit more of a clearance on how it works. In general, the process actually doesn't take that long. Sometimes it can be lengthy, depends on how busy they are, but usually it can take anywhere from 2 weeks to a month. It doesn't take any more than that usually. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for sticking around for this long. Hopefully it hasn't been too long of a video. Yeah, drop me a like, drop me a sub if you'd like it, and I will see you guys on the next one. See ya.